Welcome, everyone, to The Art of Business with Greenville Center for Creative Arts. I'm Alexis Krcelic. I am the Creative Program Director here at GCCA, and we are so excited to be here with Stanley from Family Trust. And Stanley, if you want to introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about what you do, about Family Trust Credit Union, and then we'll get started.
Yes, my name is Stanley Jackson. I am our Chief Retail Officer, so I have the pleasure and the luxury of really having a role that's focused on supporting our employees as they support our members. In that role, oversee all of our branches, like our contact center, and starting to work with business services a little bit now. So just an exciting time for us at Family Trust. We have a 65 plus year, I think 67, 68 year now history, primarily focused in York County and serving York County. And now we've transitioned to Greenville. So great opportunity for us to come down and just continue to help, spread the work that we do, the credit union movement as a whole, but also the services of Family Trust.
I love that. So tell us a little bit about, today's topic is going to be about financial literacy. And of course, we'll get into, some tips, understanding, really helping artists with financial literacy. We'll delve into what that actually means and how they can implement that into their lives. But I wanted you to tell us a little bit about how you actually got into banking, what interested you in that. And as we talked a little bit off camera, you also are very interested in helping people, giving back, and kind of where that comes from and how you see that, just in your personal daily life.
Yep. So thank you. First, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity. I mean, this is always amazing anytime that we can share a little bit about financial literacy, and not just Family Trust, but it's specifically Family Trust. But as a whole, we always think that's an amazing thing to help our partner credit unions as well. Me personally, I took a little bit non-traditional route to banking, so I didn't grow up and say I want to be a banker. I started out the education route. So from teaching high school to then teaching college as well. And I spent the lion's share of my career the early parts of my career teaching college at Winthrop University. And from there, an opportunity came up where they needed someone that was an educator to help with the training, the drafting of documents and procedures and things of that nature, drafting manuals. And really the education part of banking is making sure that we move people along the continuum, internal and external. And that's kind of what led me to it. And so from there, I transitioned and kind of followed that path from a larger bank to Family Trust through the education portion of it. And then eventually kind of just, expanded and took on a role with retail. And now I get the opportunity to be able to help our employees and help our members alike.
I love that. So for those who aren't aware of what a credit union versus, maybe your more traditional bank that people are familiar with, tell us a little bit about what that difference is, and also obviously why you like working for, a credit union and why you would recommend that for people.
So it's one of my favorite questions. I mean, I love when that question is asked just because I've worked at both, and I didn't, like I said, I started in education. And so the reason behind it is really probably more important to me some days than what we do. And so the credit union it's the spirit of the credit union is a cooperative, so we are about people helping people. So when I worked at the bank, and I worked at the bank, so I'm not a bank basher. Sometimes people are, they come from the credit union and they're like, we hate the banks, and the banks are like, we hate the credit union. I think we all have a need, you know, and we serve a specific purpose. But our focus is more of a grassroots getting down, and even though credit unions are growing and they're much larger, but it is really helping people with their day-to-day needs. And so one of the things when people ask me, I said, one of the unique things is you'll see credit unions in center, of downtown, and you'll see them in New York City. But if you think about where credit unions are located, we're generally where you live, whereas banks are where you work. And I think that defines holistically what we're about. So we want to go where you are. We want people, in the event that transportation is an issue, to be able to walk to our locations. And we want to sit down and help them, not just get a loan, not just obtain money, but really step back and think about how they feel about money, how money engages with their whole life, and how we can help them meet, their financial needs. It's not our desire to tell them what to do with their money, and it's not our desire just to sell products to them, but it is our desire to help them use the money that they have to help them support their families, to grow their vision, and meet all of their needs.
I love that so much. And I love what you said, that it's where people live. I think where you expanded in Greenville, your first location in Greenville out of York County is right on Lawrence Road, a place, like you said, I have friends that live there that could absolutely walk there. And, maybe some people work around that area, but it really is much more community-based. And I think that's really beautiful. And then y'all even have a gorgeous mural that is now on the side of the building that was painted from some Brandon Fellows alumni and current Brandon Fellows at the time. And it is stunning. And I loved so much that when you guys opened, that art was important to you, but also local art was important. I feel like that really kept in spirit with, the point of the work that you all do.
And and it really goes to the heart of who we are, so not looking for, and we appreciate all artists, but the partnership is probably more important for us as we engage in the city. We always look for, when we go somewhere, to your point, is that, the businesses, that's important, and we want to make sure that they have access. But one of the things when we start going to an area and we expand, we look for rooftops. We want to know where are the houses, where are the people living, where can we be, integrated into a convenient part of their life. That. We don't want it to be a task where, I'm not saying we won't ever go towards downtown Greenville area, but that's not our focus. Our focus is making sure that people have easy access to us, that when their kids are out of school and we do a great program where we give dollars for A's, we want them to be able to grab the kids from home, bring their report cards up so we can celebrate with them. Those are the kind of things that are meaningful.
So sweet. Tell me about that initiative. I wish I was back in school.
Yes.
I would love some extra dollars.
It's great. So I have a 6th grader, and it is amazing. I could give her $20 for each A, and it does not have the same impact of her bringing her report card to the credit union and being able to walk up to the teller line and show them her report card. And as part of her motivation for making straight A's, I believe, is that she walks up there and she shows it to them. And we do this for any member, so any member that has children, we open them an account, and we want to start that financial literacy with them early. We want to teach them about saving and how important it is, and the things that the parents value. So the parents value, education. It's not just about the grades and the A's. It's more about, the experience and being a part of their family. And so we have that opportunity to be able to, to celebrate with them, and we'll let them go to the treasure chest. But more importantly, we want to make that deposit into their future.
That's so sweet. I love that. And I think what you said was really a great segue into the financial literacy of, starting people young. And obviously we're products of our environments, what we've been exposed to, what our parents knew, what people around us were doing, what we saw in movies, all of that. And, this podcast and video, the point is for artists and how they can create a thriving art business, whether they're part-time or full-time, because that's a lot of their dreams. But also this, could be for anybody who has a business, and, how they can really include, the important foundational elements to growing their business and do it wisely. And some people may be listening to this and watching this from a really beginning stage of their, career, which is amazing. And some of these people may be more advanced and, learning and continuing to grow, or maybe some of these topics, this is the first time that they've really kind of delved into them. So tell us a little bit about financial literacy. What does that word even mean? And then I'd love, obviously, from there for us to kind of get into how can artists specifically, but, with what you do, how can they become more financially literate?
Yeah, no, that's a great first start. When you think about, like you said, especially thinking about an artist, and I'm not an artist. I have some friends that are artists, and it's a unique endeavor to engage in, especially thinking about part-time or full-time. And so that's important, as the foundation or the core. And I say, I'll go directly into financial literacy, but we don't want money to be the stress in people's life, at a credit union. We don't want that to be the barrier. We don't want that to be the thing that they go to bed at night worrying about and they wake up. We want to put them in a position. Now, that doesn't mean that we have money, just to give them, but it does mean how we, when I think about financial literacy, it's about the decisions that they make, the understanding that they have about their money, the role that money plays in their life and the decisions that they make. And that's what we're more focused on is let's walk through. So when someone joins Family Trust and you think about an artist and they're starting and you have these two concepts, you have this concept of your personal finances and then how you commingle those finances with the business that you're starting, and that's what we think about is how do we walk someone through that journey? So when they get a membership, you can start a membership online, but we do an onboarding process. We want to sit down and talk to you and find out a little bit more about you. So, you start out and you say, hey, I'm an artist, I'm working a part-time job, and this is what my passion is to do. We want to support you in that. So we want to provide you with that necessary education. And we see people from all walks of life. So we see people that are starting, and because they're, and I keep referencing it because that's a great, I think that's a great example to use is that you're a new artist and you say, I have supplies and things I need to purchase. I have rent I need to pay.
Oh, yeah.
So how do I manage that? And we tell people you don't have to be an expert at money. You don't have to. That doesn't have to be your thing. It's great the more you know about it. We want to teach you, but we want you to pour your energy into being an artist. We want to help you manage your financial piece and your financial landscape and provide you with the education. So we sit down with people. We want to sit down with you and start that process of, hey, you're a member here now. Here's what we have to offer for you. Here are the service we can provide. Here's the education we can provide. And it's not our job to make the decisions for you, but we want to support you and we want to be your barriers, your guard. So when we see, decisions going in one route and maybe they're not, they won't yield to the end goal of the result that you want. We want to nudge you a little bit or at least give you some advice or consultation. And so when I think about financial literacy, it's really, we don't really do a great job just as a nation, just in educating about money. I go back to, when I was a kid in school, I mean, you do a little bit, but, you walk out and you're responsible for managing your income or the lack thereof. Yeah. And so we kind of try to fill that gap. So we like to start back from a financial literacy standpoint to say, hey, we're not sitting down saying, here's $1, here's what money is, but we want to pick up from wherever you are and educate you around the decisions you make and how they can help support your vision or your goal or how they can sometimes be a barrier.
I love that. It really sounds like your goal is to be a partner with people and the community members. And I think that that's really important, especially for artists. I think, it can be a really lonely career path. Oftentimes people feel competition with other artists. I need to get in this show, or they got the grant over me, or if someone bought this piece, they're not going to buy mine. Yep. And, also just the work of creating art, unless you're doing a collaborative project like a mural or, you're commissioned with another artist, it's a lot of solo time. And what I've really seen and what we've seen at GCCA is that you have some people who either maybe have a manager, maybe have a partner, whether that's, a family member or, a life partner who knows more kind of about the business side, or perhaps people studied business and then now they, have pursued art. But a lot of times people are alone in that, or maybe their family lightly supports them. Sometimes their family doesn't and says you're throwing your life away, right, with art, whatever kind of art that looks like. And then what they're good at, like you said, is art. Running a business, and that's why we're here, is, a whole separate thing, right? I mean, you can go to business school just to run a business, right? And then on top of that, that's not even... the art is their main focus, not the business aspect. So, I think that it's really amazing because it can, like I said, it can feel really lonely in being an entrepreneur in whatever capacity, but then especially with the work of creating art. And a lot of that can bring up emotions and can be really beautiful and cathartic or painful, et cetera. And so just to know that you have somebody who's there looking out for you and on your team, I think is such a beautiful way to be moving, especially through money, like you said, which can be, even for non-artists, an incredibly stressful, topic or thought. I know that there have been plenty times in my life where thinking about money and thinking about activities I wanted to do with people or trips I wanted to take, or even just looking at the numbers in my bank account, was very anxiety inducing, having been an entrepreneur previously. Things didn't always go the way I wanted to. And I often was alone in those endeavors, or I didn't want to talk to people about the numbers. Maybe I felt embarrassed, or I didn't know the best path to move forward. So I think that that's really beautiful, how you guys kind of look at that partnership. And so talk to me a little bit about some of the resources that you all provide for people. So if people become, a member, what kind of, are there videos? Are there just those one-on-one conversations? Can they schedule meetings, with people to kind of go over that, learn, and continue to be on top of their finances?
Yes, I'd love to answer that. And one of the things that you said, if you allow me to, I'd like to go back to it. You said something that made me, I'm an educator, so I always believe in learning. And you tied a concept together for me just now that I've never thought about like that. The emotion that's tied to money and the decisions. And really when I focus in on thinking about being an artist and the emotion that's attached to it. So you have some families that support and some families that don't necessarily see the vision that someone has at the time. And so that's part of ultimately what we're really trying to do is allow that emotion to be and that passion to be channeled into their work, into their business, and remove some of that from money. We don't want. And it's just by nature it's happened. Me and you just set the example. I've been in that same spot. I remember coming out of college and all the emotion around paying my bills and looking at my account and figuring out how am I going to survive.
Totally.
All those. And this amazing thing just happened to me. I just graduated from college. I've been told and should have the whole world in front of me, my career. Like this is supposed to be an exciting time. Mm-hmm. And the emotion attached to the money is really taking the energy that I really need to be poured into it. And so when you said that, it made me think about like that's one of the things that we want to do. And that rolls right into the question that you just asked. So what resources? And that's where it starts, the education of the world's not over, because you made this decision and, you're in between, your next project or you're trying to get the grant. And we want to be able to separate that and help people put that emotion and provide that education so it brings down some of that tension. One of the things that we do provide, educational resources on our website, and there's a lot about our products and things like that. But what we've noticed a lot of times is that the consultation, those resources without the consultation sometimes poses a gap because now I got even more information.
Totally.
It's like if I read a medical book today, my mind works where I can understand it, but I still don't know how to operate on anyone.
Absolutely.
I can't service myself. I still need to go to a doctor. It equips me when I go to the doctor to understand, what they're presenting to me. So that's kind of the approach that we like to take. So we love a consultative approach. We love for people, like I said, to use our online resources and we don't want this to be where now their job is sitting with us all the time, but we want to give them enough information that wherever place they are. So if they're starting where maybe their family did give them a little more and they just don't know what's out there, we want to educate them on that. If they're starting and this is a whole new concept, whether it be getting in, being independent or whether it be starting the financial journey to be able to support. What we want to be able to do is kind of step into this and say, so let's look at this. Let's do a consultation. So we have employees called member service consultants. And that C for consultant is intentional because we want any member to be able to walk in and sit down with them and say, hey, here's my situation. And it doesn't mean that they'll have every single answer. Their job is to be the resource. And so let's identify some. And we see members sometimes that they're an artist and they've been on this journey and they're in between projects and maybe things hadn't worked the way that they wanted to. We provide another valuable resource. We have a young lady named Rebecca, and she is a financial counselor. And what we saw how we got there is because before we had a third-party service and we were paying for the members to be able to go, but that can be overwhelming. I think, you made this so easy. You really have because a lot of things you said is that it's a difficult thing. Sometimes it's embarrassing. So we're saying, hey, go call this other person over here. And you're like, hold on.
Totally.
I got the courage to come talk to you, and now you want me to go talk to
that was all person. The courage they had was the one conversation.
I exhausted all of it. I don't know this person. They're not a family trust employee. So we took some of our resources and we said, you know what, we're going to bring that in-house. We're going to build that skill. So we identified an employee who was able to kind of take that on. They got the certifications. And that way, when somebody comes in and we're either consulting with them or they say, hey, I want to get a loan for my next project, and they're not financially in a place, then we don't just say, hey, sorry, come back to us when you're in a better situation. We say, hey, we got a great resource. We think you should talk to this person. She'll help you budget. She'll help you pull together a whole financial plan, and she'll get you on the path. So a person could walk in, an artist could come in and say, hey, because I think about artists and I think about realtors. I live with a realtor. And so my wife, I can see the parallel between you finish a project and you get paid, but now there's not another project lined up. And so how do you manage those funds? How do you know what to pour into your personal life versus what to pour back into your next project? Because your next project, you're still going to need resources and tools. They're not going to pay you always up front. And so she's there to help you do that, to say, hey, let's just, you don't have to be in a bad situation. Just say, I'm lost. I don't know what to do. She'll help you budget. She'll say, hey, so you tell me, here are some sheets. And sometimes she'll give them homework. And she says, hey, I want you to sit down and you think about, so, your next grant, if it doesn't come through, what's your plan? And so she'll help them kind of take their income, line it up, and get it in a place where now I see a path and a plan to the success. And I also have an escape plan for if the timing doesn't align where, I'm not feeling overwhelmed. And then she can help sometimes make a recommendation and say, hey, I know you feel like you have it, but maybe we need to get a credit card. Maybe that'll help us where we can take some of the pressure off of, waiting to see, does the check arrive today so I can pay the rent. Maybe we buy the supplies on the credit card and we come over here and we keep this money here and we keep it stable for rent. So those are some of the things that we do. We have some online resources, but we have people that are dedicated to it. And then we have, from a business standpoint, we have like partnerships with third-party services too that can help people with how they manage some of it.
I think that's so important. And again, I wish I had y'all back when I had my business because, and I was really fortunate that, I had other restaurant owners and, other business owners around me. But again, when it came to the business finances and then how it's affecting your personal finances, right? Because, I wasn't, they were so interlinked, right? If I didn't have enough money to pay people and, my credit card was maxed out or whatever, it was coming from my personal savings. And that felt horrible. But also, again, there was very little oversight. And a part of that, too, again, was the emotions that I had around money and what was happening to where I didn't want to share it to those people. But I love that y'all work to create plans. I was watching Gilmore Girls. It's one of my favorite shows.
Great show.
And I was watching an episode where Lorelai, their house has termites, and so they need to get a loan. And she calls up 5 different places. She's been working at this inn for 5-6 years, or even longer than that, and had this stable job, but she doesn't have a ton of savings. And everyone just flat out is denying her, and no one's giving any kind of information as to like, well, do X, Y, Z, and then come back to us, right? And she's like, our house is going to fall apart. I don't have other options. And she was really fortunate that her mom, Emily, was able to co-sign a loan, but her mom also set her up with a banker that she knew. So, my father always said growing up, it's not what you know, it's who you know. And that can be really helpful. But sometimes people don't come from places where their family knows anybody, or maybe they're not a part of their family, or maybe they live really far away from them now, or, they're mostly taken care of by friends or things like that. And they're just as confused or, they have other stressors. And so I think people who will say, hey, this is the current situation. Let's be realistic about it, but let's also create a plan. Let's look at where you're trying to go. Do you want to become a huge artist? Do you want to just make it so that you can only do a part-time job and do art part-time? What do you really want it to look like? And then what are the tangible steps to take some of that stress away, some of that guessing, and again, to know that you have someone on your side with it. I think that's kind of one of the biggest things with being an entrepreneur is having somebody that is supporting you and is helping you with those tough decisions. And I would offer that money is probably one of the toughest ones.
Very true.
So tell us a little bit about what you would recommend to people, whether that's, someone who's just starting or someone maybe who's farther along in their career, if they have a negative mindset with money, whether they have a ton in their bank account or very little, but, maybe it is a stressor, or they were taught that money is bad, or, money makes you greedy, or, they just didn't see people manage it well. And it was always, painful or stressful or caused fights in their families. So that's kind of, how they're walking into their situation with money. Again, no matter where they're kind of at with how much they have, what would you recommend for people, whether resources with you all or just in general, to kind of shift that mindset and change it so that when they just open their bank app or they go in, to see y'all, it's not immediate stress and negative emotions?
So I think one of the primary things is, if you think about, a relationship, the partner you pick is probably one of the most important things that you can do. You can be in any relationship you want to, but the wrong partner makes for more problems, And so I think the start of it, no matter where a person's starting point is picking the right partner, So, I'd like to say it's family trust, but I'd say any local credit union, but making sure that you partner with the right person, because that's difficult to change that on your own. I mean, if you go to the internet, you're going to find an article to support anything that,
totally,
whatever opinion or view, that those are the ones we're going to gravitate towards. And so sometimes when that view exists, we just need somebody to help us kind of get started. So this is not necessarily always going to be a hand-holding process that lasts for 3 years. It can be sometimes just that entry point. And so being able to sit down with someone, and our staff are skilled at pulling that out of people. So we're going to pull that out of, we're not going to say, it seems like you have a negative view of money. Like, what we're going to do is we're going to ask questions we're going to try to find out where you stand, where it came from. We're going to pull it out, and then, our job is to kind of coach you and get you there. And so to present other options. This is a common thing that I run into, is that a person says, probably one of the most common, statements I get from business owners and from individuals is, I don't believe in credit cards. My mama told me credit cards are bad. My grandma said, never get a credit card. You get a credit card, you're going to end up in debt. You're going to be buying stuff that you shouldn't. And I said, one of the first things I help people to reshape, and I said, and that could be true. I'd be lying and remiss to say that doesn't happen. There aren't some people that have abused their credit card. I said, but what if that credit card made the difference between you getting the art supplies that you needed for the next 2 weeks while you work on the project to be able to get the paycheck, or you not being able to get the supplies so you can't take the project?
Yeah.
And so it's just, I think, how we think about it, and having somebody to challenge us, just like in any relationship. We're not there just to say yes. When I've partnered with vendors, one of the questions I always ask them, I say, I want you to challenge me. I don't want you just to tell me that everything's great. If I can do that on my own. I've become pretty good at making myself believe that my ideas are amazing, even though I see the result of them. But the reality is I look for people that can help me. And so, but how they challenge is what's important. So the second thing I ask people that say, I can tell real life stories because I engage with members. The member who called me and her daughter's cart was compromised, and she was in Florida about to go on her graduation, cruise. And her mom called me panicking. She says, my daughter's getting on a ship in an hour, and her card's been compromised, and she's going to go into the Caribbean with $0. Those are the kind of situations where we can say, you don't worry, she don't worry. Pull out your credit card. Swipe it as many times as you need to. When she gets back, we'll figure it out.
Yep.
So those kind of things, and so it's about changing people's mindset about it sometimes, and seeing and teaching them how to productively use it, because maybe they are just like what you said. They've seen people abuse money. They've seen people not manage it well. And so we like to start that education path. Let's teaching you how to do that and we'll provide those resources however you want to. If you want a hands-on approach, we'll do that with someone. But it really starts with there. It's kind of difficult to do that on your own, just because we don't start that journey in school. We don't start with,
I wish,
we don't. And so we're really kind of the student when we start with money. And sometimes our parents are the teachers. Sometimes, bad experiences are the teacher. And our goal is to be that partner, is to say, hey, you don't have to have bad experiences to teach you. If you have great resources around you and a significant other or a parent or somebody, great. If you don't, we're that person. Come to us. We want to be, a statement you made earlier, you said, your parents taught you. My parents told me the same thing. That said, it's not always what you know, it's who you know.
Yeah.
But we want to be the who you know. So come to us. We're the who you know. You don't have to know, the local financial expert. If you can just walk in the doors and kind of chat with us or call us up on the phone, we'll have somebody to call. You don't have the time to come to the branch. Call us, call our contact center, say, hey, can someone call me? I want to talk to someone, a consultant, someone around. Just in general finance, I just have some questions. We'll set up a time to talk to you at your convenience.
And for people who may be watching this and aren't in, York County or Greenville County, would you say that credit unions generally across the board, we're making wide statements now, but are much more approachable that, I think a lot of, again, entrepreneurs or, artists, sometimes they can be really introverted or, have social anxiety. Making phone calls could be hard. And so what would you recommend that they kind of say, especially if they're starting, sort of at the beginning or maybe even not the beginning of their career, but, maybe it's the first chance they've really taken money seriously and are trying to do something with it so that, again, they're able to, shift that mindset. How would you recommend they approach that? And would you recommend kind of credit unions overall as if they're not, local, being able to have that partner with them?
Yes, that's what I was saying. And like I said, I'm not a bank basher, but I came from the bank, and I think it's two things are important. So the culture of any group or organization, and that's not necessarily, this is where I think it can be universal, it's broader than family trust, is that the culture of a credit union was just designed that, they were, if you go back to the history of them, they were started with people and plants a lot of times. And our history is that, Raquel Print and Finch and the employees got together and put the money together because there were some employees that were closer to retirement and they had more money. They didn't like seeing their coworker, their peer who was younger that had kids not have money, and so they put their money together. And they work together to lend their money out so that people had access. And that's the story of all credit unions. We all kind of started out of that grassroots movement. And so we've retained that culture, So a lot of times when people, my friends, and I have some that are doing really well and some that are not, and some of my friends that are, not doing so great, they're like, I can't get them, well, I'll take that back. One of my friends recently who called me, and he's doing really, really well. And he wanted to borrow some money for a car. And he said, but I don't need much. He was buying a more expensive car, but he wanted to put the majority of it down. The bank denied him. And he called me and said, you not gonna believe the bank denied me. He said, and he's like, I'm A credit. I make great money. And what it came down to is that the loan was not of enough value. Because they have a lot of overhead. So not to beat them up, the reality is they're much bigger. They have a lot of overhead. There's business to run. And so A credit, low interest, very low balance, they're not going to make a lot of money off that loan. And so they passed. Wow. And I remember working at the bank, and I remember people coming in, and at the time when I was working at the bank, I think the minimum loan they would do for a house was $75,000. And so somebody comes in with $60,000, they either got to find the rest of the money because they said, look, we just don't make any money off of those loans. And so that's kind of the cultural difference. And so when you come into a credit union, we do $600 loans at Family Trust. Because some of that is about, we do share secured loans because we want to teach people that process of, hey, you might not be ready for a credit card, but let's build your credit. Let's help you get your credit to a place where you're ready. Or let's just use this to teach you about, you've never had the responsibility of making a monthly consistent payment. So let's help you do that. Let's get this credit card. We don't want you to pay a lot of interest. We just want you to get in the habit of doing it. So when we get ready to buy a car, we get ready to take out the business loan as an artist. We want to be able to make sure that you feel comfortable and you're not learning through that experience. Let's start you early. So I think coming to any credit union is a great opportunity. I think for them to come in, whether it be phone or putting an inquiry online, what our focus is, and it's going to sound kind of cliche, is we don't really care how you come to us. So one of the things we focus on is the skill of being able to identify those challenges. So I think of us, I use doctor references all the time because I think of us like a hospital. In the hospital, you come in, if you look sick, you don't have to say a word. They're going to help you. You can come in and you can tell every symptom that you think it is. They're still going to diagnose you to make sure that they're doing the right thing. And so we're kind of, the cliche of you come to us any kind of way. And so, if you could just make it into the doors of the credit union or do an inquiry, we're generally skilled enough to say, let's step back and see kind of what's going on. We want to hear from you. You can tell us, hey, I'm just getting started. But you can say, hey, I want to open an account. And we're going to do the opposite. We're going to say, hey, so let's talk about your whole landscape. Let's talk about what are your plans. When I would sit down with members periodically here and there, I'll say, while I'm processing or doing whatever I need to do, I'll give them a sheet of paper and I say, write down your goals. Like, it has nothing to do with opening an account. That's how I teach our employees. Say, ask them all kind of life questions. Let's find out if they're, just getting out of school and they're trying to figure out an apartment, or if they're planning to buy a boat in 3 years, because both of those are equally as important. We don't want you to overpay for the boat. We don't want in the railroad you own the boat. And we also want to make sure that you're not stressing every day about managing your money to be able to pay your rent. So wherever you come in, now we have an amazing marketing department. Catherine's here today, and they're just absolutely amazing. So they try their best to get resources out to people and to go out and find people and identify people, and sometimes that's just even from them touching the website, that we're going to go and pursue them to make sure that if we can support them. But, that's a little more difficult when you think about how big the world is. But I tell people, especially if you're thinking about a new artist, I'd say, look, just make your way over to a credit union and just kind of, ask the question, say, hey, I'm getting started. And, transparency is amazing, to be able to say this is new to me. I'm unfamiliar, I'm a little more on the shy side. We're going to pick it up. But if you never say a word, as long as they walk in the door, we're going to treat them just like family.
Yeah, I love that. So tell us a little bit if, I was an artist that, is really just trying to become a working artist. We call it where, they're actively, it's not just a hobby, but they're actively, working towards whether that's, again, part-time, full-time, whatever their goals are. And, I don't have anything set up business related to it, obviously without doing a full consult. But, what are some resources or first things that you would have people think about so that people, listening and watching this can maybe do, some of those exercises or start to think about those things themselves. So I know you kind of talked about goals, looking to set up, an actual business account, kind of walk us through a little bit. I'm just coming and saying, I kind of have some personal finances, but I don't understand or know what to do as far as the business side goes.
Yeah, no, that's great. And so that is something that we are engaging in right now on a more formal level. So we've had business accounts, over the years in our history, but we've seen the demand and the growth, and the need for business services over the last few years in a greater capacity. And so we're running a project right now where we're launching it, and we're kind of softly doing it right now, but we're going into full-fledged and really focusing on micro and small businesses. There's a lot of resources and everybody wants, what we consider in the sales world a whale account. I mean, everybody wants Nike's account and Walmart's and Chick-fil-A's account. But a lot of times, the gap is for the micro and the small business. So the entrepreneur who's getting started, and they need that level of support and the resources. And as we see them scale and grow, and now, they rent a studio and there's 3 or 4 artists that are in there, and they don't know, they're like, well, how do I pay them? Like, I'm not a payroll person. And so we can offer some of those those services really basic and cheap. But to get started, we always say, I think there's a difference between, if the person say, hey, I just want to dabble in this. I'm not really ready for it to be a full business. I'm just going to, kind of do this on the side. There's routes that we can help people to say, hey, one of the things, that can always get scary as a business owner is commingling funds. Like, it's great when you see it come in, but it gets really, really confusing when you're trying to figure out, how long is this my money? Like, where does it sit? And so if a person's not really, starting a formal business, even just establishing separate accounts. And one of the things that we did, it was people love it. And it was just such a simple thing that I just didn't even recognize how important it was, is having the ability online to kind of name their accounts.
Yes.
And people just love it. They love the ability to be able to do that, because now we can start with, okay, every week or every project I have, I want to really launch in a business, but I want to see how this is going to go. So let's pour some money into. So let's start a separate account and let's name it, Art Foundation. We're going to this is our foundational account for growing our art business, and then we'll help you sit down and say, okay, let's put some money in here while we prepare. So we're not running a full business out of it. This is money that we're using to kind of help ourselves get established. But when we venture over to the other side and say, I think I want to really launch out and try this, we have our business services employees will be equipped to help the people kind of decide and walk through. And so, we won't tell you whether or not you should be a sole proprietorship or whether or not you should be, start your own LLC. But what we do is we challenge people and we give them the resource to say, okay, so do you have the basic things that you need? You're going to need your EIN, you got to have the taxation piece. So we tell people the documents that they need to get established, because they're kind of almost like the chicken and the egg. I mean, you need to do your business stuff, but you also need an account. There's really not many people that are going to take you serious until you get an account. And so that's one of the foundation of getting their business license in their local city, kind of determining what are some of the things they need. And so I would say from a business side, this is usually how it works. They come to us and they say, hey, I want to open up a business account. They've not done any of the steps. So then we turn around and say, okay, that's amazing. That's a celebratory thing.
Totally.
So what steps have you taken? And they say, this is my step.
Yeah. I came here.
Yeah, this is the step. Like, this is going to establish me. I'm going to be serious once I get an account. And we say, okay, well, that's great. So we'd love to open your account for you. Here are some things that we need. So we don't say, hey, you're doing it backwards. We don't say, hey, you don't have all this. What are you doing? We kind of start with, hey, so here are some basic things that we'll need. And so if you're going in business with someone, here's a set of documentation that you'll need. Have you got your business license? Have you identified? Have you filed for a tax ID number? Because we want you to be separate from this. We want to make sure that some years down the road, when you decide you walk in and you say, hey, I want to get a loan for a studio, we want to be able to track this back to the business instead of it all being dedicated directly to you. And say, well, it's in my checking account. And we say, well, that's kind of difficult because there's a lot of stuff in your checking account. And so we got people through based upon the basics of them telling us. Now, we never profess to be, business advisors. We're not going to say, hey, this is better for taxation and those kind of things. We just tell them the basics that they need to get started. And usually what we'll see is that gives people a lot of confidence, because now instead of just kind of scouring the internet, because I can tell you, if you put in right now, starting a business, you'll get a lot of resources. You're also going to get a lot of services that pop up that say, we'll do this for you.
Totally.
We'll do this. And before you know it, you paid $500 to $1,000 for something that literally was 3 things that you could have filed.
Yes.
And you could have did it on your own. So we don't channel people towards those kind of things. We give you the basis that you need so that you can get going and then let that process naturally evolve.
Yeah, absolutely. My mom, she also is a realtor. And when she was first starting it back when I was in college, she said, I need to get an LLC. Have you done this? And I said I had. Again, the entrepreneurial spirit is strong in my family.
It sounds like it.
And she said, I found this thing that they can do it for you, and it's going to cost this amount of money. And I was like, no, it costs $110 filing it with the state. It should take you 20 minutes max. Don't do that, Mom. I will call you later when I'm available. Which again, is fine if you have that money to be able to spend. But oftentimes, again, especially for the artist, when we're starting that, we don't have this cash pile, beside us that we can just spend the money on whatever. Really need to be strategic with it. And the $110 filing it may already be a stretch, and we don't need to pay somebody else to do it for us. But feeling like you have someone on your side, feeling confident that you know what to do, that you're not making the wrong decisions and choices, or you're not filing things that you don't need, I think is really important. And I love that that y'all kind of help work backwards for people, and that you don't do it yourself, but you provide them the resources, or this is the website, or hey, this is a different person you should talk to if necessary. Because again, when people are just doing it alone and you just search Reddit and, that's helpful, but gosh, you could go so many different ways with it, and so I think that that's really great, kind of helping people start foundationally. So talk to me a little bit about what you would recommend people do who have irregular income. So we've talked about that, between projects. Maybe you got, $2,000 check, you just painted a mural, and then, you sold a piece for $100 and you still have bills to pay, or you still have a studio to pay for, or supplies. What are some steps and things that you talk to people about and look for and plan for people who have that irregular income, who are wanting to build that financial literacy, wanting to be smart, wanting to make good decisions, but you don't always know, when those projects are coming. Maybe people are late on giving you the payment, or you don't know if you're going to receive the grants, things like that.
Yeah, and that's where I think how we set up, one, being able to kind of separate their business from their personal life, because they are by default, they're going to engage with one another.
Absolutely.
Making sure that we do that in a way where it's manageable and that they can make appropriate business decisions. We have a lot more resources on their personal life than we do on the business side, just because every business is different. That comes down to your business plan and those kind of things. And so one of the things that kind of ties right to it, it goes back to your last question. So some of the times the education that we provide is by knowing that we're not experts. So people will come in sometimes and they'll ask us a question and we say, our response is, and maybe sometimes we can answer the question, but we say, hey, have you talked to your tax advisor about this? And they say, I do my own taxes.
Yes.
And we say, well, because you're going into a business, you probably want to, now it doesn't mean you have to go out and get a CPA that costs you $500 an hour. And we say, hey, these are some questions that you probably should ask them. So just even that becomes an educational thing. And then that in turn helps them kind of work through this process you're talking about. Yep. Saying, okay, so I really need to think about this business. We can help you with the money part, but let's separate those two and say, so let's think about your personal responsibility. So you got rent, you have these kind of things, you got a car payment. And how are you generating the income to get them? And so sometimes the income's there, but we're in between. And so sometimes that means a line of credit is the most appropriate thing because we know that we can support it and you have the income and it's just inconsistent. So, it's a small thing. Sometimes we look at people's car payments and the determining the stress in your life sometimes comes down to the day that your car payment is made. I get paid on the 5th, but I get paid on the 15th, my car payment's due on the 1st.
Yeah.
And so I got 14 days of stress, and now a cycle of late payments, all because of the date. And so we want to help people when we sit down, we say, so what date works best for you? And we want to make sure that we alleviate that. Oh, I get paid on the 15th. Okay, well, so let's make that car paid on the 16th, and the 17th. Let's make sure that we remove that. And so we're not. So it's the same kind of thing on that business side of thinking. So, on the personal side, we're looking to see, what responsibilities, what liabilities do you have in life? And then how do we generate the income from that? And then figuring out where we can buffer for that. So if there's a resource or a way that we can do it, like I said, credit card's not a bad thing. If we're just out shopping every single weekend, sometimes maybe not the greatest thing.
Yes.
If we're using it to help our business when we're getting started, that's not necessarily a bad thing at all. Yeah. Because it beats sometimes turning down the job or going out getting a loan from, I try not to ever bash any industry because they're necessary, but, payday lenders and things like that. And it's not because the service they provide is not a necessary one. It's that we often, we beg and plead and we're like, hey, that check here has a 300% markup on it. Just apply with us. We could probably get this for 7%.
Totally.
And so it's things like that. And so, it's a little bit challenging sometimes when, the person's trying to navigate their way and figure out what they want their business, how they want to scale it. But usually when we can partner those two together and we can have like a Rebecca say, hey, let's talk about your goals. And if their goal is to grow their business, let's talk about how we generate the income, how we manage the income to get there, and then challenge them to say, but if you need to consult with someone about your actual business and how to get started, let's build that into it too. Let's build those fees into it. Let's talk about what we need to do. And so it's just helping partner. It's being really a good life partner for people. We don't have all the answers, but we are, where we lack in answers, we generally step up in resources.
Yeah, I love that. And I mean, that's the key, right? There's not going to be one place for an artist, whether that is, how to grow their art or how to grow their, business. There's not one place for every single answer. We hope that this art of business can provide a bunch of different experts for that. But, even us, right, we don't have all of the answers for all of the things, but being able to point people in the proper direction, I think, is really important. When you were talking about the payday loans, I don't know if you've seen the movie with SZA and Keke Palmer, but SZA is she's an artist in the movie, but they have to get money really quickly. So they start going to payday loans. They get rejected. They go back again. And Cat Williams, the comedian's outside. And he's like, if you don't have the money today, you're not going to have it tomorrow. And he's just like begging them to not because he became really broke from how much, interest they were charging him and everything. Which again, sadly is, the reality. And so to be able to actually have people that are consider it kind of, the doctor analogy, right? I mean, my health has made such a difference when I've had doctors who took 30 minutes, an hour, sat down with me, including, the vets, who take care of my animals versus the people who they see you, they're in, they're out, oh, you're overweight. Okay. That's it, and then you're just stuck with this terrible news and you're like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I'm paying you now for this, whatever.
Now I'm overweight and depressed.
Yeah, exactly. Now I have no plan and can't move forward. So I think that's really great to be able to have those kind of actionable steps. And so if somebody, as an artist, again, whether that's someone who, has a bank account and is really kind of just growing, or someone who's more established, what would you say are 3, daily, weekly, monthly, money habits that you would recommend for them to just continue to whether that's be educated or, feel less stressed about their money, or just overall people who have a good grasp and a good relationship with money that they consistently do, that you would recommend, an artist to do as well?
So I think goal setting is one, and not just around money, letting the money be a support to it. But if a goal is to save enough money so that I can, pour into the business, I think that's great. But if not, just even personal goals, and being able to bring those goals to the credit union and say, hey, so here's my goal, and here's the thought that I have associated with it related to money. But I need another, opinion on this. And so how do I go about this? Because we should be able to walk them through how they reach that goal, or from a financial aspect. We should be able to tell them there's more than one way. There's been times people come in and they say, I want to borrow money for this, and they have money in their account, and, sometimes it makes sense for them to use a little bit of that money. Other times they have money in their account and they want to get their money out, and we say, do you don't mind sharing with us, what are you doing with that? And they say, well, I'm going to do this. And we say, hey, just think about if we leave that money there, it takes all the stress off of your life, because it's there. If things go awry, you have the money there. Yeah. And the cost of using our money is so cheap in this incident, just like the stress, the feeling, the emotions. So I think goal setting is a great thing. The second thing I'd probably say is the education and the understanding, because we've talked today and we've shared a lot, and you shared a lot of great information and asked a lot of great questions. But the one piece we hadn't thought about is that this is always a moving target. Yeah. So one variable changes, it changes the whole thing. Totally. And so I think the education around, so we don't want to be the person that now we built this where you can't move without us. We want to be here to hold your hand and support you and partner and cheer you on. But we also don't want to enable you either, know, and so the information and knowledge we have, our goal is to share it with you. It's not to keep it here proprietary and say, we know all the answers. If you have another friend that's an artist and they want to get into this, they got to come see us. We want you to say, hey, go partner with them. And we want you to have enough knowledge and education that you feel empowered to share the story, and they feel like they want to come to us because of your benefit. So I think the education piece of it, because that'll also bring the fear down, the unknown. We all know that. When everything's gray, it's scary. And so we like to know kind of, and so I think those two things are very, very critical. And I'd say the third one I would probably say, I guess it kind of ties to the first one, is being able to sit down and kind of write out your vision. So often we know what we're doing today and all this, but where are we trying to go with this, and not be scared of it, not be scared of, like you said, from one of saying, hey, I love this and I just want to be able to do it for the rest of my life, to I want to open up a studio as the size of this beautiful building that I'm in. Yeah. And our job, once again, is we're your partner. So once you kind of lay that out and you think about it, because we don't ever want to, we don't want to move people towards a goal. Our job is, I tell our employees, I say, because you work with money, you're going to have all kind of opinions. But if it's somebody's lifelong dream to own an Escalade, and that is their lifelong dream, and your mind, you're like, but you could buy 3 Hondas and you could do all this. I was like, your job is to help them as long as it's safe and, it's not going to put them in a bind and all those kind of things. If that's their dream, your job is to help them achieve that. Yeah. It is not to decide that or not to judge their dream. Sure. And so as an artist comes in, I think going back to what you said about sometimes people aren't supportive, that's the beautiful thing, is that we love everything that everybody loves to do, and we love it because they want to do it. You know, we don't have an opinion on whether or not they should or shouldn't do it. I mean, now if you come in and you say you want to be, Scarface, we're going to say, hey, that's illegal. Yeah. We're not going to help you. We're not going to let you borrow money for that. But short of that, I mean, as long as it's something that is important to you, we're the best cheerleaders you can have because we're cheerleaders with resources, Yes. So we're going to say, hey, so, those are some of the things I think that if I'm not an artist, but growing up around entrepreneurs, is that I've seen a lot of times because of the emotions, we forget sometimes what we set out to do. Yep. Like this is our goal. This 100%. Is our vision. This is what we intend to do. And sometimes that'll keep you on the hard days. Yeah. On the days where it doesn't look like, it's to remember that this is a long game and this is not just because this didn't work out or I didn't get the project or I bid on it and I didn't get this grant that it's all over. It doesn't mean that. That's just part of the process. And we're here to help you say, so what's the 3-step plan? Let's have a backup plan. It's the same thing I tell people when they start an account. Here's what we tell you. You need overdraft protection, but it doesn't have to be the one that has a fee. It could be your savings account. It could be your credit card. It could be all these. So let's have multiple layers. Let's have multiple ways to make sure that in an event that something happens, you're never by yourself, And so I think about an artist and the volatility sometimes that can come along with the work is we want to help them build a plan that when the first thing happens, it doesn't ruin their vision or their dream. And so that starts with them knowing what that is, because if it's, hey, I just want to get into art, we're not equipped to tell you all the steps, but we want you to think a little bit deeper about that, because when the first barrier comes, we want to be able to say, hey, we talked about this. Let's go to your backup plan when it comes to the financial aspect of it.
Yes, absolutely. And I think what you said about the vision is really key because, in any entrepreneurial field, it is so up and down, right? Yep. You're having a great time, then there's a fire, and then, it's working well, and then you didn't get the thing, and then, it took out more money than you were supposed to, then your whole day's consumed by calls and, whatever, right? And so, and again, it can feel really lonely, so that feels so beautiful to be able to have, you all there to kind of partner along with that, and also to encourage them again, to kind of look at what's the bigger picture and that multi-layered plan, the plan B and C and D, because the likelihood is you're going to have to pull those out. You're going to have to.
And that's life.
It really is. The, more life I spend, it's funny in high school and, college, if people went, whether that's trade school or university, I feel like people, what are you majoring in? What are you doing? What are you going to do with this? And so young, they're asking you, what's your life plan? And nothing in my life has gone according to how I planned. Quite literally, nothing. And so from, the dog I got to who I ended up marrying to where I live to what I majored in and what I actually then am doing now. I had a plan. I love a plan. I'm very type A in that way. And none of it has gone that way. And so I feel like, again, kind of where school fails us, whether that's, high school or, university and beyond, is making those extra plans. And that's, gosh, if I had been told that earlier on, not just about, the financial aspect, but about all of it, right? General, you want this studio, someone else takes it before you can. And then instead of just saying, well, I'll never get a studio, well, what else can you do, right? And making things work. Because if you wait around for that plan to work perfectly, you will just be sitting there for the whole time.
And that's the reality. I mean, that really is. And when I think about credit unions, that's the unique thing, is that I didn't have that feeling when I worked at the bank. The closest I've had to it is when I was at the university, is that you don't leave people where they feel alone. And so quite often when you lack that in your plan, you put all your eggs in this basket and it doesn't work, and you're like, well, where do I go now? Yeah. And it evokes all those, your plan failed, you don't know what to do. And that's the operational pieces. I don't know what to do now. Totally. Then I got the emotion attached to it, that because my plan still failed, and I just knew this was going to work. I wouldn't have did it if I didn't think it was going to work. And so now I lack the confidence for a plan. So it's better if you can start with those plans. I ask we have an amazing executive team. And so we are one of the unique groups that we're actually like, we enjoy one another. Like we're not just coworkers, we really do. And so we were yesterday at the State House, our CEO Ryan and our COO Lauren Jones. And I looked over at Lauren, and we have children, and we're all very transparent. And I looked over at her, I said, did you ever think this is what you'd be doing, is walking down the streets of Columbia, going to legislative meetings? And she said, never in my life did this cross my mind. She said, this was not on my plan. This was not. And she said, I talked to my daughter, and she's like, how is, like, I thought you worked at a credit union. What are you doing in Columbia? You know? And so, and that's the reality, is that the reality is our plans don't generally go the way that we always think that they'll go. But with someone helping us along the way and the support, thinking about what if, you know, we're not planning for it to fail. We're trying to ensure the success, you know. Absolutely. And so that's what we're here for. We're not going to challenge our, you know, I would hope that after this, every artist walks into Family Trust, and we're not going to, you know, we're not going to sell them a false dream. We're not going to say, hey, just do this one thing, it's all going to work out. We're going to say, hey, but if it doesn't, what are your plans? And, and we're here to help you carve that out. You know, we're going to etch that out on paper, and we're going to help you think about it, and you're going to leave with some questions and some thoughts, and you're going to leave with hopefully a little bit more confidence to know that, you know, if it doesn't work out, you know, the way we thought in A, then we have B and we have C. And if C doesn't work out, then come back and we're going to figure out D. And I ordered a sweatshirt, and it didn't fit me right, so I gave it to my wife, and she put it on the other day, and she said, what does this thing even say? And she looked at it, and the sweatshirt said, what if it all does work out? And I was like, and it may, and a lot of times with the right partners, it does. It does. So we want to see every artist walk in the door because we want to be the right partner for them. You know?
I love that. And also, you know, it might work out, but it might look different than you thought.
There you go.
And that's hard too, you know, especially when things are so personal to you, right? The art, you know, you're creating it out of yourself, out of your brain. Oftentimes your experiences, your pain, your hurt, your joy, whether that is, you know, visual art or performance art, you know, et cetera. And so, we can get really attached to how it looks, right? I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to become this thing, and I'm going to travel around and whatever. And maybe actually you become a full-time artist, but it's in a very different capacity than you thought. And so being also okay with that, and also being able to shift your mindset and say, you know, instead of I failed because I'm not touring the world, actually I get paid and my work is now in people's homes all over the world. They send me pictures, you know, of it. And then I actually got invited to someone's place in France. So now I'm going to France for it. And then maybe I could do a workshop. And all of a sudden your dream has become a reality, but it's not the exact way that you envisioned. And I think that vision is really important, but holding it loosely is definitely what I've learned is key. Otherwise, you'll just keep being disappointed, even when you do have success, because the likelihood is it won't be the exact same thing that you.
That is a fact. Because strategy changes. You know, our CFO, Susan, well, she says that, you know, she always challenges us, you know, to think about that. You know, our strategy, and our CEO, Ryan, our strategy will change. We revisit our strategy every couple of years. Yeah. If we might have a 3 or a 5 year plan, but we're going to look at it every single year.
Absolutely.
Because it may need some adjustment. And so, like you said, you know, things are getting started and they're rolling, and it doesn't look just like what you envisioned. You thought, you know, it would happen this way and it'd be in this studio, and now it's traveling, you know, and maybe you're traveling with it, but is it still going to help you achieve your dream and your vision? Going back to, well, if it does, it just looks a little bit different. Yeah. So that's an exciting piece of it. Sometimes it's that it changes, but it doesn't mean all is lost. It just looks different.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I have 3 more questions for you. Okay. So tell me, what are the services that you provide at Family Trust? And if there are, you know, possibly unique ones to you all, or just that, you know, people could expect kind of from credit unions, that, you know, we kind of touched on loans, you know, is there high yield savings accounts? Is there, you know, savings checking? Can they, you know, apply for credit cards with you all? Kind of walk us through a bit of, you know, what some of those services and products actually look like.
Yes. And so that's, you know, I'd say, you know, banking is commoditized. You know, you're going to see very similar things at most places. But we offer a full suite of services, and I don't want to escape that, but a lot of times it's not what you do, it's how you do it that makes the difference, and so what the intention or the spirit behind what you're doing. And so we offer, a full suite of services from loans, from autos to mortgages, home equities, and so all of those kind of residential related ones, and then also, personal loans and vehicle loans, credit cards, share secured loans. So we offer the full suite of services, and now we have a lot of business products as well, so business accounts. I think the unique thing is partnering, and most credit unions offer some variation of those, and sometimes you subtract one or two, but one of the things we're seeing in the movement right now is that, I think post-COVID and then just with some of the kind of economic trends, people care about their money and what their money is worth. So you think about, a few years ago, we were looking at mortgage rates that were 2%. And now, people are excited over a 5%, mortgage rate compared to where they were, a year or two ago. And so I think it's how you do it and making sure that people are put in the products that, yes, sometimes the money costs a little bit more now. So they're in the right products that still helps them achieve their goal without it being, something that's solely based around dollars. Do we all need to make money to survive? We do as individuals, we do as companies, we do. But making sure that there's a healthy balance between not abusing the consumer. And so we offer a full suite. And so one of the things right now, people are paying attention to their money. So, we offer a high yield checking account because people are, sometimes they get a little bit scared. Like, I want to put my money in a CD, but now it's people like, I want to have access to it just in case I needed it.
Absolutely.
So we have a really great product that allows people to put up to $20,000 in a checking account and earn a really good rate on that.
That's awesome.
And so they still have access to it, but it's not sitting there, and traditionally in a savings or a checking account, especially, you're using pennies on the dollar, pennies, if that. And so we have some of those, and we are really big on making sure that we funnel our dollars back into our members. So one of the things that we did, this was probably one of the, it came from a partner credit union. We were on a call talking about something else, and they told us, they said, hey, I'm sorry we were late to the call. We were really swamped today because this is they did it, I think, before, they call it Black Wednesday, and they did a loan promotion where they discounted auto loans, and me and our VP of retail, we were sitting there talking after the call, and like, this is great. So he sent it in one group, and I sent it in another group, and then some of the people that got together and we started talking, and they were like, why don't we do this? And so our chief lending officer and our CFO said, let's do it. I mean, it's, are we going to, if we kept the rates normal, could we make a lot more money? We absolutely could. But this is a time of year where people need a break. People need the support, the help. Just think about the economic climate. And so it started with what most people would think non-traditional. It starts at the bottom and gets killed at the top. When it went up to the top, our lending officer, our chief lending officer, Ron, he said, won't we do it for X amount of days? Or I think he said, won't we do it for 30 days? And everyone's like, people are like,
you're hoping for one day.
And then the CFO, which everybody would think normally a CFO would shoot it down, CFO said, well, why not discount it by 2%? So if you could just hear the stories and to make the link back even to artists. So you think about someone who on a day-to-day basis, they're trying to get their business started. They're in a volatile business, but they still have to live life because they got to get to the studio. So they still need a car. They still need a home. And a lot of times when people are getting started, I mean, we see interest rates come in from, lenders at 23, 25, 28% for cars. Unfortunately, that's not uncommon, for us to see it. If you could have saw the joy and the tears that we saw for all of December while we ran this promotion, because I had people that I sent over myself, and these were college-educated, great people, but they, one guy was his first car.
Yeah.
And he went out to the dealership. He bought his first car at the dealership. They charged him 16.85%. We redid his loan for $199. He said, that changed my car payment, my term, and my life, he said.
Yeah.
And so when you think about sometimes the answer to the artist question is not always on the business, is how we help them realign their life to take the stress where they can't pour money into the business.
Absolutely.
When you're getting started, sometimes it's let's reduce, let's slim this down, let's manage your personal life, because the reality is you're at a place where you got to use a little bit of your personal finances to fund while you get started. Well, let's look at your personal finances so that we can move more money from one side of your balance sheet over here, to your business side of the balance sheet. And so it's not always where you got to find more money. We can sometimes find it there. And so those are some of the things. So we ran it all December. We ran a 2% off of whatever your qualifying rate was. So whatever you qualified for, we took it down by 2%, and I mean, it was amazing. People loved it. It was, like I said, people say, that was a brilliant idea. Well, we got it from a partner credit union, but it's really not about the idea. It's more about the intentions.
Totally.
So people are doing that. The other credit union, they were doing that. Alabama One, they were doing that in December because that's when people need the break the most.
Yep.
And so that's what we're here for, is to do things like that. And so we have tons of great products. But we always sit down with people. We want to make sure we get you in the right one. And sometimes a no is not always a no. So sometimes what about this? So you want to buy this. And we've even had times that we really confuse people when we do the opposite. The person says, I want to buy this used car. And we say, we can get you a new car cheaper.
Yeah.
They're like, well, I didn't think I could get a new car. And we're like, we actually can get you a new car, because just the conditions and the rate and everything is going to be cheaper.
Totally.
And you're more stable. And so we get to see those stories. And so our products in particular, our mortgage products and our consumer products are aligned to make sure that there's enough products where there's options, but they're also not overwhelming. They're pretty simple.
Yeah, I love that because, again, it feels like whether that's simply to live life or to then have a business, and then especially, within art, you're creating something else. It's like it's seemingly that you have to be an expert at everything. I now have to understand, how cars work, how the pieces are put together to know what's going on with my car, and then and to prevent being scammed from when I take it in. And then also I have to now know about loans and this, and then I'm trying to do my regular work. And then, artists, they're trying to grow in their art. And then also they have to know about the LLC, all of these components to where it's incredibly overwhelming. And again, to kind of prevent yourself from getting taken advantage of, unfortunately, by, the internet or just different services. So I think that that's amazing, really, to be able to offer people breaks, to be able to work with people to say, like you said, oh, we want this, but actually we could potentially do this. What do you think about that? Just giving them those options. To know that they're, I would say, safe, and again, money, it's, most of us probably want more of it, especially when starting a business, or when having a business that's, kind of volatile with when income's coming in. And so I think that the confidence and the safety that you all help people have and also build, around their finances is really beautiful. So, I'm really excited, and I hope that everyone goes, especially in Greenville, to you all. And they're located on Lawrence Road. And if you want to share any of your website, your social media, and then I have two following questions for you.
Yes, and so we would love for everyone to come over and see us. We're at 1800 Lawrence Road here in Greenville. But once again, our website, and you could just type in Google Family Trust Federal Credit Union, or it is www.familytrust.org. And you'll find some valuable resources on there, but also using that as a route, to be able to reach out to us. And, whether it be just an inquiry or whether it be loan or whether it be a consultation, we're here, to support in any way.
I love that. Yeah. Amazing. Well, the last two questions I have for you are personal, but about art. So again, I think when people think about art, they think visual, which is true, but we also have performing arts, we have music, all of that. And so the two questions I have are, what is your favorite piece of art at the moment? Yep. And then also, what would your life be like without art?
So I really love and appreciate art. So my favorite piece of art is we have some personal friends, and her name's Tashandra. Tashandra is an artist, and she's amazing. And so she did a piece of artwork that we have in one of our buildings that I personally own. And I don't think she put a name on it, but I think it just kind of exhibits the life that my wife and I live in. And so it's an abstract piece, and it is just a beautiful piece of art. And the unique thing is she painted my wife a purse similar to it.
Amazing.
And so we get to carry it. You know, she carries it with us. And so, and it's amazing. My wife she loves purses and things like that. But I was in the closet the other day looking for something, and she keeps it in the case because she painted the case. It's like a Coach bag, but she painted the box as well.
Amazing.
And so I was just looking at it. I was like, man, to have the skill and the ability to be able to do it. And so I think that flows right into the second question. It's not just physical art. And so my outlet is I travel a lot. So I left to come down here this morning at 5 or 6, and I run all around everywhere. And yesterday I was in Columbia. But so one of my favorite art forms is music. Yeah. You know, I love music. So it's kind of my thing. You know, I talk a lot, I engage with people. And so it gives me the ability to be able to listen and hear how people project their thoughts. Yeah. And sometimes that's instrumental. Sometimes, you know, I listen to a little bit of everything. And so I think my life would be a lot more stressful without it. I mean, I really do. I think that I don't know that I have many outlets, and that's one of them. You know, I enjoy the gym, but I can't work out without music. Oh, absolutely. It's torture. I just can't. And so I think my life would be dull. I think it'd be boring. I think it'd be fun. Yeah. You know? Yeah. So, yeah. Absolutely. I love it. I agree. And your wife and I would get along. I love purses as well. So, she loves them. They're pieces of art that you get to take with you. And our account doesn't love them, but no. Yes. No, maybe they'll appreciate and value. Who knows? But Stanley, thank you so much for being with us today and teaching us more about financial literacy, really helping to give people the base tools to kind of gain that confidence with their finances, and also just the proper steps to take, even if they say, I don't know at all what to do. I feel like people will walk away listening and watching this with, you know, a better understanding of the support that they need to look for, the, you know, kind of steps that they need to be taking wherever they are in their career, and also to know that, you know, there are people out there who will be supporting these artistic endeavors, that if maybe they don't have that support, you know, from family or friends, that there are people and places who are there and willing and ready to give it to them and walk kind of alongside them, at least in the, you know, financial capacity. And I'm sure many of those people become friends along the way with you all. So thank you so much for being here today. And I hope that everyone goes to Family Trust, and that also, if you're not in the local area, that people really take a look into credit unions and kind of start at that grassroots area and the people who are there for the community, because I think that is one of the key things we're missing in general, and also especially within the artistic community. So thank you so much. And I'd like to thank you so much, Alexis. You've made this a great experience here, and I mean, just amazing, just some of the insight that you provided, and just really everyone. And so I love to shout out not just the mural, but the artist. I don't have all their names right in front of me, but just a partnership with that. And I remember walking out there watching them every day, and they were painting, and I turned into the father. I was like, are y'all drinking water? Are y'all truly, it was the middle of summer. I know. It was the middle of summer. And so, but just to see them pour their passion and their gift into something that we get to benefit, and that everyone else, so if you don't, come open an account, which I want everybody in Greenville to open an account. But if you don't, just ride by there and appreciate the work that they've done and the partnerships that we have with, along the way. It's just been a great experience. So thank Catherine, thank you, Alexis, and our executive team for being so supportive of all the work that we do. Absolutely. Thank you all so much. Thank you.